Welcome to the first CEEPC meeting of 2026. I'm Cindy DeBala, Mayor Pro Tem of Tacoma Park, CEEPC member since 2017, and your chair for the year for the CEEPC committee. And I've also served on the Chesapeake Bay Policy Committee and the Transportation Planning Board. So I have some familiarity with regional issues beyond Tacoma Park. And I hope that we will have a lot of good conversation this year and make some progress on climate issues. 2024 was the hottest year on record since the Industrial Revolution. 2025 was one of the top three hottest years. So given the diminished federal focus on greenhouse gas reductions, it's more important than ever that we do our bit individually and together as communities. And so I'm pleased to have this chance. And throughout today's meeting, a couple of logistical things. COG staff and I will do our best to look for raised hands and monitor the chat throughout the meeting. If all else fails, feel free to say, to ask to be recognized. So please add your name and affiliation to the chat if you haven't already, so we can keep attendance. Today's meeting is being recorded and is being streamed. And I'd like to recognize, and it's being streamed on COG's website. Sorry about that. Streamed where? So I'd also like to thank Sarah Bagley, chair last year from the city of Alexandria, for her seamless leadership as she chaired CEEPC last year. And I want to welcome our new members, of which we have quite a few. Dahlia Palchik from Fairfax County, Daniel Oates, the alternative for College Park, my neighbor, Frankie Fritz, and the alternate Silky Pope from Greenbelt, George Stewart from Prince William County, Hal Meltzer from Hyattsville, Jennifer Macedonia from Montgomery County. These are all from Maryland. Almost all from Maryland? Is that right, Heidi? Yes. Okay. Kelly Speaks Bachman, Maryland Energy Administration, Michael Estavy from Bowie, Nancy Schrum from Gaithersburg, Ian Marcus who's the newly elected chair for ACPAC, who won't be with us today, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew that we have a new chair of ACPAC. I probably should have asked all of the new folks to wave so we know who you are. Anybody I missed? Okay, good. So one more important announcement. We will have an in-person meeting on March 25th because it's a special day, and more about that later. So make sure you put in commuting time on your calendar for March 25th for the CEEPC meeting. There will also be a brief orientation for new members, and the staff will talk about this later. So first piece of business before the main agenda, meeting summary from CEEPC's November meeting. Motions and seconds can be made verbally or in the chat box. Do I hear a motion to approve? Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Yeah, we have a move to approve.
I'm much better if you just say something. I appreciate that. Second?
I'll second.
Thank
Randy
you.
Freed.
Thank you. So any changes to the meeting minutes?
No.
Okay. Any abstentions?
Mhm.
And unless I hear online or see in the chat box any no votes, this is your chance to vote no. We will assume everybody else is voting yes. This is your chance to use the chat to vote no or abstain. Okay, so the meeting summary is approved. Thank you for that piece of business. So now to our main agenda. Maya Davis and Ms. Sherman will present the last segment of COG's mid-course review. If you were around last year, you know we did buildings and a couple of other segments, and here we are, providing information about where we stand relative to COG's 2030 Climate Action Plan goals. And another topic for the March meeting is our draft mid-course report. So listen up, because what this means and what we do about it is one of the themes of the year. Maya, go ahead. Maya and Carolyn, go ahead. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. And great, pulling up the presentation now. So yes, thank you. Again, I'm Maya Davis on the Climate Energy team here at COG. And Carolyn Sherman, also on our team, is going to be presenting with me today. And again, we are talking about the mid-course review, and we're going to focus on a good number of the performance indicators and some case studies today. So next slide, please. We basically, this mid-course review is looking at how we're doing towards meeting our 2030 greenhouse gas emission reduction goal of 50% by 2030. And as Chair DeBala mentioned, we have been talking about this for the last year, bringing you lots of pieces of data and information throughout the year. And again, no worries to the new members. We'll do a full kind of summary recap along with sharing the draft report in March. So next slide, please. Okay, so I want to spend a minute on this slide that we're kind of talking about the performance indicators. So the main goal that we are tracking is, again, that 2030 greenhouse gas emission reduction goal. And there are also indicators here that are on your screen that we are also tracking that help move the region towards meeting those greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. The COG board also has a couple other related goals that we're tracking towards, which is 250 solar systems in the region by 2030, as well as maintaining a 50% tree canopy region-wide. Now, these other indicators don't have established regional numeric goals, but they were identified by our regional climate action plans and related studies from the past handful of years as important indicators showing progress. And they do have data available that we can track from the past and continue to track in a meaningful way moving forward. In some, not all cases, but in some, we may have done some greenhouse gas modeling that looks at implementation levels and what those implementation levels would need to be to help meet our 2030 greenhouse gas reduction goals. Essentially, we're looking at 1 to 2 key performance indicators per sector for the region. And we're also trying to provide as much local data as possible to help you track your climate progress at the local level as well. So last year, we did talk about a lot of the indicators that are on the top half of this table. And today, we're going to be talking more in depth about the bottom half, these indicators that are highlighted in yellow. But just to give a really quick recap, especially for those of you who are new, last year, some key outcomes that we talked about were, even though we've had some bounce back in greenhouse gas emissions since the 2020 COVID pandemic, the region is still meeting the 2020 greenhouse gas emission reduction goal, which was 20% reduction since 2005 levels. We also talked about how the electric grid is getting a lot cleaner. We've had significant growth in solar and green building in the region. And 2 areas that we noted that need continued attention is the growth in solar. Continued renewable energy deployment is going to help us meet our very stretch COG solar goals. It's going to help meet the RPS standard. And it's really the top way that we're going to meet our 2030 goals. So that's an important focus area. And the second area that we also noted is probably continued attention to expanding zero energy buildings across the region. All right, so today, again, we're going to talk about electric vehicles and mode shift and travel behavior, zero waste and sequestration. And at a high level sort of picture before we dive into the details, you are going to continue to notice the impact on COVID on the data trends in several sectors. You're going to see positive trends in growth in EV ownership and charging stations and ports today. The regional waste diversion rate has been waving between 41 and 50% the last several years, and we're going to look at some of the reasons why that's happening. And then, at least as of 2021, the COG board was, the region was meeting the COG board goal of 50% tree canopy in the region. So that's the high level kind of summary of what we're going to see today, but let's dive in and move on to the next slide. All right, so this is looking at our trends in EV ownership over time. And the blue bars are going to be your hybrid electric vehicles, and the red bars are going to be the vehicles that need a charging station. So that's going to be your all electric vehicles and your plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And you can see we've had some tremendous growth with a total of over 335,000 vehicles in 2023, with 111,000 being the plug-in hybrid electric and the battery electric vehicles, which is, again, that red bar. Now, we did a regional electric vehicle infrastructure implementation strategy, or REVI strategy for short, and it showed a low to high growth scenario for our battery electric and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And by 2030, the low growth scenario looked at about 460,000 of these vehicles, and the high growth was up to 945,000 vehicles. And we did some modeling for our recent comprehensive climate action plan that showed, like I said before, the top way that we're going to get towards our goals is cleaning of the electric grid. But also second to that is electric vehicles and the expansion of electric vehicles. And really, to get towards that 2030 greenhouse gas emission reduction goal, we're really going to need to be closer to that high growth scenario of that 945,000 vehicles. So we're going to need continued exponential expanded growth in getting these vehicles on our roads. Next slide, please. So this slide is just taking that 2023 bar from the last slide and diving into the details. I know that it's very important to you all to see your local progress as well. And so this is breaking that out to show HEV, the hybrids, PHEV, the plug-in hybrids, BEV is your battery electric, and then we compare that against LDC light duty cars and LDT light duty trucks. And I'm not going to walk through all of this, but I would note that an interesting piece of what the data showed that I thought is that Loudoun County has 4.3% of their battery electric and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles are on the, well, 4.3% of all light duty vehicles are battery electric and plug-in hybrid electric. And that was actually the highest percent of any jurisdiction across the region. Next slide, please. So drivers of these plug-in hybrid and battery electric vehicles are going to need a robust network of charging stations across the region. And we've grown from about 273 locations and 661 ports or charging plugs back in 2013. And we're really excited to bring you the 2025 results. We just got finished with this last week. And we've grown from that back in 2013 all the way up to the end of 2025. We've had 2,227 EV charging station locations with more than 6,800 ports. And so really excited that this chart is showing like this tenfold growth across the past dozen years here. Next slide, please. So this slide, again, takes that latest data that we have for 2025 and breaks it down to your local jurisdiction. So we have the number of station locations as well as the number of charging ports or plugs. And we have that broken out by level of charging. And so you can see from this chart, DC, Fairfax County, Montgomery County, they've been leading the way on getting these stations on the ground in the region. And again, I'm going to reference back to our REVI strategy, where we evaluated how many EV charging ports do we need to support the growth in EVs on our roads. And so in a low growth scenario, we would need about 13,000 level 2 charging ports and just under 500 DC fast charging ports. And in the high growth scenario, we were at more than 29,000 level 2 ports and 1,000 DC fast charging ports. So as you can see, we're really already at the level that we thought would be needed for DC charging, fast charging ports. And we're about, maybe like a fifth of the way there to the high growth scenario of needs for the level 2 charging ports. But I think what the data is saying is that even if, that EV charging station growth slows a little bit, it looks like we'll be on track. We're on track to meet the 2030 needs. Next slide, please. So we also wanted to share a couple case studies related to electric vehicles. And the first one we'll share is the Charge Up Fairfax program, which is this really great program where the county is helping to handhold homeowners associations and community organizations through getting EV charging stations in their communities. And they've had so far, it's a pretty new program, but they've already had 19 communities participating, and 6 communities have successfully finished getting their charging stations installed. Next slide, please. And the second example that we wanted to share today is the town of Bladensburg. So it's really exciting to be able to highlight on one of our smallest communities in our region. And through a state of Maryland grant, they were able to deploy charging stations at their town hall, the local community center, as well as the local library branch. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to dive into more of the mode shift and travel behavior strategies and performance indicators. So strategies related to mode shift and travel behavior, they reduce motor vehicle travel, and they're typically measured by vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. And so this can look like transit, ride sharing, biking, walking, strategies that help bring jobs and housing closer together, or teleworking strategies. So those are some examples of the type of strategies that we're tracking through VMT. So between 2005 and 2023, the region's population has grown by 23%, jobs have grown by 10%, and overall VMT has increased by 4%, and VMT per capita has decreased by 14%. And of course, you can see a dip here in 2020 that is COVID related. Next slide, please. The second indicator that we're looking at for this sector is annual transit ridership. And so this table is breaking that annual transit ridership down by local agency. And we have well over a dozen agencies in the region. And the trips that are included in this chart include rail, bus, microtransit, and paratransit services. And again, you can see a dip in 2020. There was this widespread disruption for transit ridership. And while riders continue to return to public transit, habits and routines continue to change. And many agencies have been adjusting services to address these shifts in demand through things like improved on-time performance, as well as service frequency. Next slide, please. I also just wanted to look at the same information and share it with you in a little bit different way. So instead of by agency, this is looking at transit ridership by the type of mode. So again, Metro Rail, Metro Bus, and then local bus, commuter rail, etc. So this just gives you a little bit different of a picture of the same information. Next slide, please. And so again, wanted to share a couple examples of this in action in our local communities. And so the first one we'll share is Falls Church and their Washington Street Multimodal Improvement Project. This project worked to improve walkability and access to transit. It made multimodal connections between downtown and Washington Street, as well as the local metro station. And they did this through construction of a transit plaza, new crosswalks, streetscapes, signal upgrades, and the like. Next slide, please. And the second example is an interesting case study of Montgomery County FlexBus. So it's an on-demand transit service, and is an example of that shift in trying to meet change in demand. And there are on-demand bus services in Glenmont, Rockville, and Wheaton. And these are serving a pretty significant population and job core area, as well as an equity focus area. And on top of providing that significant on-demand service, it's also with a low fare of $1. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to pass it over to Carolyn, who's going to walk through waste diversion and sequestration.
Hi, thank you, Maya. All right, so jumping into zero waste, our regional climate plans have been promoting diverting waste from landfills and combustion to recycling and composting, which therefore reduces solid waste emissions. The regional waste diversion rate has increased from 35% in 2005 up to 50% from 2013 to 2015 and 41% by 2023. In our recent greenhouse gas modeling, we looked at implementation levels that move the region toward an aspirational 80% waste diversion rate. There are several reasons why we see a bit of backsliding with the regional waste diversion rates. Some of those reasons being that waste diversion in general tends to follow economic growth, and that was down during like post-pandemic, which then affected the generation of certain recyclable materials from sectors like businesses. Also, businesses have historically generated a lot of recyclable paper. And if economic activity is down, commercial office space is not occupied, we are then going to see a decrease in recyclable paper collected / generated. There's also the general industry trends of going more digital, aka not using paper in the office or not subscribing to paper news at home. The continued lightweighting of recyclable shipping / packaging materials, whether by making them thinner or switching from heavier glass to steel and to plastic. All right, next slide. All right, and then here is the local waste diversion rates for 2023. Local waste diversion rates range from 28% to 53%, with the 53% waste diversion rates coming from Alexandria, Arlington County, and the city of Falls Church. All right, next slide, please. All right, and then here is our first case study, which we decided to focus on the city of Laurel. They have an address-based app called Recycle Coach that provides information about the city's trash and recycling program. The app allows residents to access the schedule and events for recycling and learn about the accepted materials, set reminders to never miss the weekly collection day, and receive instant updates. They can also have the ability to export the calendar events to their own calendar application. All right, next slide, please. And then for our second case study, we decided to focus on a combination of four cities in the region, which are the cities of Frederick, Greenbelt, Falls Church, and Manassas. And they have all established contracts with Compost Crew, which is a locally owned business based in Rockville, Maryland. And with these contracts, they're able to provide weekly curbside food scrap collection services for households in their communities. As for the outcomes, the cities are providing an easily accessible option for their communities to compost the food scraps, reducing waste going to landfills and converting the food scraps into a rich soil amendment. All right, next slide, please. And now moving on to our final section, sequestration. So carbon storage is supported by tree conversion policies and practices in existing tree and forest. In 2024, the COG board adopted a regional tree canopy goal of 50% across the metropolitan Washington area to ensure the region meets its goals, its climate goal of 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions below 2005 levels by 2030. In 2021, the Chesapeake Bay program worked to collect very high resolution land use and land cover data sets for the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The data was published in 2024, and COG has since taken this data of the region to see where we currently stand in regards to our goals. As of 2021, COG is maintaining approximately 50% regional tree canopy from the graph on the right, with the tree canopy coverage of DC, suburban Maryland, and Northern Virginia. Next slide, please. All right, and then on this slide, you can see that the COG region has experienced a net loss of over 20,000 acres of tree canopy between 2014 and 2021. To put this into perspective, that is approximately 21,500 football fields of tree canopy loss that was seen in the region over the course of 7 years. That is an average of 4,050 acres of net loss per year during that time frame. If we experience another 4,050 acres of tree canopy loss in 2022, that would have already put us under the region's goals of the 50% tree canopy goal. At that rate, by 2025, the regional tree canopy would be approximately 49.3%. All right, next slide, please. All right, and then on this slide, with this table, we decided to look at the local and regional tree canopy percentage of land with tree cover. This graph shows the percentage of land in the city or county with tree cover. As you can see, Charles County has the highest percentage of tree canopy coverage with 67%, and the city of Greenbelt with the second highest percentage of 61%. Amongst the small to medium cities, Bowie by far had the largest acreage of tree canopy, which was just shy of 6,000 acres. Next slide, please. With also the fact sheets that we were able to gather, we were also able to gather annual benefits associated with tree canopy coverage. All of these numbers that are shown on the screen were calculated by the Chesapeake Bay program based on 2021 tree cover data using iTree tools, from which we were able to calculate the regional total. The benefits for the COG region ended up being 66.4 million pounds of air pollutants removed, 7.65 trillion gallons of reduced stormwater runoff, 1.48 million tons of carbon sequestered. This then produced over $54 million saved in annual air pollution removal, over $68 million saved in annual gallons of reduced stormwater runoff, and over $704 million saved in annual carbon sequestered, which then made the total over $826 million saved annually in the region. All right, next slide, please. And on this slide is all the direct links for each of the COG member tree canopy fact sheets that were provided by the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And this is where we pulled all of our data for the mid-course review, and it will all be available for you guys after this presentation. Now we will move on to the next slide. All right, and then going into our case studies, we first decided to focus on Bowie, as they have a Plant One Tree on Us program for Bowie residents to pick out a tree from their list of acceptable native species, decide where they want to plant it on their property, and have it planted by the government's contractors. 442 trees have been planted as a result of this program. Next slide, please. And then for our second case study, we decided to focus on the city of Fairfax with their Sprout initiative, which aims to engage members of the community to plant, take care of, and learn about the trees that make up their urban forest. As for the outcomes, in the first of the initiative, 365 trees were delivered to residents and 320 trees were planted on public land. This all culminated in 550 volunteer hours in non-native and invasive removal and tree planting, with an additional 320 workforce development hours in the city's jobs program, which is all under the city's first urban forest master plan, which is still in development as of now. In the next slide. All right, and then I'll pass it back to Maya to close this out. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. So we have background data spreadsheets of a lot of this data, and we'll send that out to your local government climate energy staff after this meeting so they can take a closer look at all their local results. And we really do encourage you all to use this local data in your environmental progress reporting, which could be through a progress dashboard you have, or progress reports, or other presentations. And definitely let us know if you have any questions about this as you look closer at your data. As a reminder, we'll have the draft report for you for review at our next CEEPC meeting. And the report really is going to focus on the high-level region-wide results. And once that report is complete, we'll be looking later this year to develop an interactive online dashboard that includes both the local and regional performance indicator data and trends that we've been talking about the last year. So we will love to hear your thoughts on what this data is and information is saying to you about local and regional climate progress and action planning. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Dabala. Thank you.
Who will need to find her video. There we go. That was really informative, and that was a lot of info all at once on 3 very different topics. But to the point, we have 10-15 minutes for discussion, so don't be shy. So first, any questions, comments about the data, the slides? There were a couple questions in the chat, but let's give people a chance to raise their hands first.
So I see Sarah Bagley has a hand up.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Go for it.
Hi,
Good morning.
sorry. Good morning. Good morning, all. Welcome to 2026. I dropped a question in the chat specifically about like the measurement tool we're using for tree canopy, and if we're able, to address that, that would be great, or in some kind of follow up. I wanted to just ask kind of a separate question as well. I love the green building energy use performance indicator. I think that's really important, but I'm curious, are we able to account generally for like transit oriented housing, or sort of, housing supply, in I guess environmentally friendly, ways, generally speaking. I know this weekend, Alexandria passed a green building policy, and wrapped up in that was a larger conversation about just the need for more housing supply generally, as like a sustainability issue, near transit especially. And so I'm curious, not necessarily that we have a whole nother metric that I understand we have to focus, but is there some way for us to track housing supply generally, and or as a footnote to sort of our green energy tracking?
Thank you, not Chair Bagley, sorry, former Chair Bagley. I'm so used to saying that. Yeah, so for the tree canopy, as far as I know, like it doesn't necessarily, the data doesn't necessarily measure like, the health, I think is what you were kind of getting at. But I think that Heidi, did you say somebody else was on the line that might know more details about that?
Yes, I'd like to use this as an opportunity to introduce our chair of the Regional Tree Canopy Subcommittee to this committee, and that's Brian Kitely from Fairfax County, and he could speak to this even better than me about LIDAR and the ability to pick up on invasive species. So
yeah, so good afternoon, CEEPC members, or good morning, I should say. It's been a long week, right, with the snow. The, yeah, LiDAR is used. It's mostly used for gaining information about structural data of the forest. So it can essentially image and give 3D imagery about data points of the canopy. So it's used to improve, the typical aerial photography that you see that we will interpret in the canopy. That LiDAR data is used to kind of improve those estimates. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any what's called spectral information. So
Hmm.
hyperspectral or multispectral imagery, actually, I think hyperspectral imagery, which has thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of spectral bands captured, can give better information about types of vegetation. So we can make some assumptions about invasive species, like for example, typically they're lower, but for example, we wouldn't be able to distinguish between vines and vines on top of tree canopy and tree canopy. So it does give us some better information, but yeah, we won't be able to really parse out invasives. So, ground truthing, and that's what we've been doing here in Fairfax County, is along with any kind of remote sensing techniques for tree canopy, we complement that with some boots on the ground field sampling, and that gives us a little bit better information. So it improves the quality of the tree canopy data, but it won't give us any information about the quality of the forest health. I hope that helps, and nice to meet everyone this morning.
Yeah, welcome, Brian. So glad you were here to to address that. We really appreciate it. And as far as the other question goes, I think that's a really good question. Maybe we could look at following up and talking with our housing program manager for your other question about transit-oriented development. Where is housing going? I know that that they had been leading on another organization in the region to look at it, but it doesn't fully capture it. I'll drop a link in the chat box to what it's Hillary is our housing program manager, what she shared with me in the past. But that could be something that could be a good follow-up for us to have and get back to you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's those questions of intersection are really important. Other comments, questions? Where do we need to step up action? Where are things going well? What's working locally at in your community for EV waste and trees? Is it
I've got a question.
go for it?
Randy Freed. Good morning, everybody. One of your slides, Maya, showed that the annual benefits of the forests that are in the region amount to something like $800 million per year. I assume that that's the benefits with respect to a scenario where all of that was deforested, right? All of our existing forests were cut down. Maybe another way to express that value that I think might be more useful for local decision making is on a per acre basis. If you were to divide that $820 million by the number of acres, I think that would imply the value of keeping land wooded. First, is my interpretation right? And second, what's the ballpark of what that value would be if you were to express it on a per acre basis? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great thought. We've definitely been relying on the Chesapeake Bay program and members of our tree canopy committee to kind of really review what the Chesapeake Bay program has put out, and we've had calls with kind of the leads on putting that data and information together. So we just had a call this month with leads on the tool and USGS and EPA and members of our tree canopy committee really kind of like looking over this data and information. And so there's a lot of great experts across the East Coast that have been working on this data and validating that data to go into these fact sheets. And so the link, I would encourage you all to go to that presentation and click on the link to each of your individual fact sheets. And we basically added that information together. But I think that's a really good idea for us to like follow up with them and see if, and see how we could, or if it makes sense to turn that into a per capita, per acre statistic. So that's, we'll definitely follow up on that.
Thanks.
Okay, more comments, questions? I see a little bit of discussion in the chat about bus. And I think I noticed, this is my question, I think I noticed in the vehicle miles, in one of the VMT slides, that the proportion between transit, between metro and bus is different. The colors didn't seem to be proportionately the same over time. And so that's my question. Are more people taking the bus proportionately? Are we making progress on getting people out of cars and into buses? Or was I imagining
Do
things?
you mean like compared to like pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, or like just overall trends?
Overall trends, yeah.
Overall trends, are we, so we're, okay, so yeah, that's, okay, that's something, I don't have that off the top of my head, the answer to your question, but we can follow up with our transportation staff. So you're talking about more like, are we getting a higher, like, you know, is there a higher percentage of people taking public transit versus driving alone? Is that kind of what we're trying to look at?
Well,
Or
that's
are we getting?
that's one really good question. But the question I was thinking about is whether, so Metro's been the mainstay for a long time. And
Mhm.
if the proportion, if I remember correctly, if I read it correctly, the proportion of people taking the bus versus Metro is changed. Maybe because of free fares. And
Mhm.
if that's the case, is it because more people are taking the bus that's working, attracting people to take the bus? Just that's my question.
Okay,
It goes
yeah, that's,
it goes to, what more do we need to do? Do we need to get people back on Metro, which is starting to happen, or do we need to get people out of the car and into the bus?
okay.
Does
All
that
right.
help?
Yeah. No, that's a really great question. I'm sorry I don't have answers to everything off the top of my head, but these are definitely things that we can follow up with our transportation staff on and look more closely at to help. Yeah, because I know you're interested in like, okay, well, what do we do, you know, with this information? So I think all these great questions can really help inform that. So we'll follow up on that.
Okay. Other
Hey,
comments or
Cindy
yeah,
and
go
this
for
is
it.
Dave Snyder. I joined City of Flensburg CEEPC. I'm a new appointee in CEEPC, but
Welcome.
the state of the commute report that was issued last week by TPB is loaded with that kind of information.
Okay.
My take on it is that people are more satisfied with transit than they were before. But the reality is, we've still got an overwhelming amount of daily commute in single occupancy vehicles. And so the challenge remains very much a real challenge in that area about providing transit that and alternatives that people will actually find attractive and use.
Thank you. Which raises the more general question of whether there are other reports like that CEEPC staff is aware of that people on the committee might want to know about. Thinking ahead to what does this all mean? There's other work, the tree work you referred to, this report on the state of the commute, that would put some of this data in context for us. So that would be a request I would have for staff to see if there's more that, if there are things that we should be looking at. Anything else? There's some stuff in the chat about transit fare, about bus and transit fares. Any comments about waste? We're just about out of time here.
Well, I do see Tom and Susan have their hands up, and I know Susan.
I'm having trouble seeing the whole crowd.
I'm not sure who was first.
We'll go with Tom, and then we'll go with the other.
Thanks. So I think just a general question. Excuse me, am I on audio? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom, and then
Great.
we'll hear Tom, and then we'll go to you, Susan.
I think that it's a general question about the crosswalk between what you've been able to show here and then the actual adoption targets in the COG climate plan, and it would cut across a couple of areas: electric vehicles, VMT, for instance. And forgive me if I didn't catch this in the presentation, but how well we're able to show now how we're doing in comparison to those targets numerically, and if we didn't show that today, whether that's something we can in the not too distant future. The other question here is the crosswalk with the TPB Visualized 2050 plan, which also has data on attainment for things like VMT and greenhouse gas reductions by trucks. So it'd be great just to get a little bit more clarity on the crosswalk with the actual goals and their attainment, and then the TPB data. I also do want to echo what David Snyder said, which is the state of the commute is a tremendous wealth of information that I think can be mined going forward here to connect some important dots in this area. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, well, you guys are definitely giving us some good ideas and trying to. This helps us really understand like what is needed or is more of interest, and so this is definitely giving us lots of ideas of what we can bring you to dive into these topics a little bit deeper and to be more informative. And I will say, we were trying to be able to say like, here's the trends, here's where we need to be, and it's really hard to, what I found, to like definitively say like, yes, we are absolutely going to meet that 2030 goal or not, because we're still one thing is that even though we're at the beginning of 2026 now, a lot of the data that we were able to get, like for trees, 2021 is the latest, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of the data we were able to get was 2023, a little bit of 2024, and you could see the first piece of 2025 data was for electric vehicles. So it's sort of like, and then we have the pandemic impacts and recovery, and so it's like it's hard to like make some sort of definitive conclusions, based off of 2023 COVID impacted data and looking all the way out to 2030. I think we can talk about the trends and where we need to be and sort of like have these conversations about like, okay, well now, where do we really need to focus our attention on to get those goals? But so, and I think that's what we can expect out of this report. And we probably can't expect saying, like absolutely, based on this 2023 data, we're 100% on track and we're 100% going to meet that 2030 goal. But I think this can really help with some direction setting. So we'll work on bringing you some more of this in-depth data to help with your decision making around that.
And just to add a very quick follow-up thought, thank you very much. I do think that forecast modeling is important. It's obviously scenario-based, it's obviously factor-based, and we'll have different assumptions, but being able to make that explicit and show the trajectories here and what's behind them might be very helpful. One quick thing I would just add, you probably saw the news a day or two ago, the updated numbers on population growth for the states in our region and nationwide. So Virginia's population growth rate is down 28% as of this year in comparison to last. And it would be helpful to understand, for instance, the role that population growth plays in these forecast trajectories in all of these areas.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And this is Dave Snyder. Just to add one more thing, Maya,
Well,
to the
there was
plate of things. And the Metropolitan Washington Air Quality Committee will be, which I chair this year, will be focused on maintaining compliance with the ozone standard. And that will require a lot of commitment from the region to maintain our compliance, our attainment. So that's yet one other element here that fits in air quality, transportation, and the commitments the region has made for greenhouse gas reduction and vehicle miles traveled, et cetera. So there's the crosswalking here, I think, will add significantly to our total understanding. So thanks a lot. And just one other element to the crosswalking would be the MWAC work on maintaining attainment with the air quality standards.
Okay, Sarah, Susan, you've been very patient. That was definitely the direction I was thinking, as staff already knows. But please go ahead.
Just very briefly on, we've a goal of,
Whoa.
which is a steep goal. And family, as we had, our curbside is great, but it doesn't really hit into composting. So it's through an app called Big Belly Smart Compost. And we've got 24 locations in our kind of metro corridors, and they are collecting about, and this was last summer, about 10,000 pounds of food scraps. That's been really, really popular. And there's like a little app, and it has to verify that who you are, so that putting weird stuff in there and causing problems. But I just share that as an example and happy to chat more if anyone can learn more.
I would like to chat more because we've just started a pilot multifamily program for composting that is putting basically putting the big bins right outside the building, like you see in some of the bigger cities, targeted to the people in that building with an education campaign. So offline, I would like to talk to you about multifamily composting. So that was great. I could talk about this all day, but I think we need to move on. And I want to thank Ms. Davis and Ms. Sherman and all the members for your great comments on what we can do with this information and where we can go with it. I appreciate the staff team's work on this, and I look forward to the in-person meeting and the draft report in March. But we need to move on. Environmental Justice Toolkit 2.0. Ms. Bonifant on the staff will provide us an overview. The Ag Pack just approved this this week? Yesterday.
Yes, on Monday night.
Right. And she'll talk a little bit about what's in it and how we can use it. So Heidi, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dybala. All right, thanks, Alyssa. Yes, I am pleased to bring this to the CEEPC committee today as final. I want to preface before getting into the toolkit with acknowledgments of contributors to this. Thanks to my COG colleagues, Caroline Sherman, who you heard from earlier, also Leah Boggs and Robert Christopher, and then also Sydney Wright in our Office of Communications for helping with editing. And to Eknaval, who was a consultant to COG and reported their findings to COG from their community-based organization outreach that they did. And then also to all of you for your reviews and providing photos for our cover. The comments over the winter holidays really made this a stronger toolkit. So I'm pleased to present it today. And with that, we can go to the next slide. Alyssa, please. So this is an update to a 2017 toolkit that COG produced, and we updated it with new case studies and examples from on the ground, as well as more resources about environmental justice engagement, and then also the policies and programs that that have equity components built into them. And this was done in a two-part, or there were two prongs to updating it. We had community-based interviews and then several rounds of listening sessions with our local governments in the region, and then added in some information from environmental justice conferences that we attended over the last year, and online research of national examples and case studies too. And it went through several rounds of reviews. So I want to thank the Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee, who provided guidance throughout the process, and many of the members were interviewed for it. And then, as Chair Dabala mentioned, it was approved on Monday by ACPAC. And again, thank you for those of you here on CEEPC who reviewed it. So next slide, please. I'm not going to belabor this one, but it was broken into 8 approaches, and I'll highlight them on the next slide. So yeah, and this toolkit, to summarize it in one slide, is really an oversimplification of the challenging work that you've all been doing, and also the case studies that we have within it. But I just wanted to highlight some elements of it. So in approaches 2 and 4, we focused on engagement best practices. First, the importance of building community trust, and then meeting communities where they are. That means literally and figuratively, and making it easier to participate in meetings and informally as well as formally in processes. And so one thing we heard from all of you was the importance of providing childcare stipends and language translation programs, and then also providing virtual and phone options for meetings. So that's those were some of the points that we really tried to highlight in approach 2. And then also in approaches 5, 6, and 7, we focused on community engagement through data collection, and then also developing leadership through programs and workforce opportunities, and then highlighting regional partners. So ECNAVAL stressed the benefits of having more resiliency hubs as convening spaces, and in the toolkit we highlight the Fauntleroy Center in DC as one case study of this, where they provide a really important role of a convening space and a resource for the community, in addition to being a resiliency center. And so we've heard that there's other jurisdictions in COG region that are working on developing resiliency hubs, and more will be coming online, but they have a very important role. So we wanted to highlight that. In addition, community involvement in data collection is another significant thing that we brought out in here. And one example was the DC Purple Air monitors. And then also community involvement in tree planting, as was mentioned in the prior presentation today. Engaging community members in these ways is really valuable too. And throughout all of this, partnerships with trusted community partners was really brought to light. And so we tried to highlight the rich partnerships that exist in the region and how having those trusted community partners makes for stronger work between local governments and their communities. And then the last approach in the toolkit highlights how local governments aren't stopping at just community engagement, but at building equity into climate and energy programs and policies. We talked about this at the auto show last week. COG held a conference on electric vehicle charging stations and the need to, and one of the things that came out was the importance of having the chargers in all of our communities, and also the uptime of chargers, making sure that the resiliency of chargers is equal across all of our communities as well, and access to electric vehicles. They are expensive, and so how are we going to ensure equity with EV rollouts? But in addition, we're very pleased to see that your climate action plans in the region and implementation plans have environmental justice components and equity considerations baked into them. And so this is very enlightening to see that we're moving ahead in this way with environmental justice. And approach 3 covered some of the metrics on how we've been doing with engagement. But it's also pointing out that it's the importance of the equity in the policies and programs as well. So it's not just an engagement, but it's taking it that next step, like you're doing with your plans, and also with resolving some of the inequities that are on the ground. So, for example, the rising energy costs that we're experiencing right now, how do we make sure that these impacts, such as reducing energy utility shutoffs, are being addressed? So it's taking it to those deeper levels. And then the final thing that we noted in the conclusion is the need to really just sustain our momentum. Since 2017, we've seen so much progress in the region, but it's easy to feel overwhelmed by everything, and especially with the rollback of some federal support right now. So the timing of this toolkit update is to just really encourage progress on all fronts that have been made, and to learn from one another so that you can continue the work that you're doing, learning from these case studies and national examples of how we have to lean into the partnerships to accomplish the work, since some of the funding has been cut back, and also even focus on this as a nation has been cut back. But if we could go on to the next slide. I think this has been a very enlightening experience for me to hear from so many of the dedicated and bright staff in our region that are working on environmental justice issues for climate, energy, and air quality, and also to hear from the frontline community members that ECNAVAL convened. And I know all of you know it better than me that there's both a logical reason and an ethical one for having this climate justice consideration. And logically, we need to accelerate our greenhouse gas reductions and prepare for the changed climate that we're living in, and then also to reinvent our relationship to energy use. And we can't do that effectively if we're leaving behind communities, literally thousands of our COG residents who are part of these vulnerable communities and need to be a part of our race to decarbonize. And then ethically, we need to keep in mind that the vulnerable members of our community are the ones that are hardest hit by the rising energy demands, the temperature extremes, and the rollback of federal protections. And so everyone needs to be informed and empowered to act as we shift to a greener economy through EVs and solar. And lastly, what we've learned through this process and from hearing from all of you is that it's really these community partners that help strengthen COG members' ability to do all of this. And so we're thankful to all of the NGOs in the region and partners who are helping. And now that ACPAC approved this toolkit, it is available online, and I'm going to drop a link in the chat to access it. But we look forward to hearing from you how you want to apply the toolkit. Keep hearing about the cases of your work in the region and your partnerships so that we can keep this like a living, breathing document, and also how you plan to share the toolkit with your communities. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Chair Dybala. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. This is a great toolkit, and I'm really excited that it's out. And the lesson on trusted community partners is one we're taking to heart in Tacoma Park, particularly the past year, with the various immigrant communities in our town. Coming from a community that is very diverse, ethnically, culturally, and economically, and housing mix, the type of housing mix. One big application for me is multifamily housing and climate work there, and that's an area that Tacoma's done a fair amount in, both housing renovation and housing resiliency, and trying to reduce the energy burden for people who live in multifamily housing. That's just our little corner of the EJ piece. We could take one or two burning questions, but we are cutting it close here. Who's got something to say? Nobody? Okay. Moving on. Maybe we can return to this topic as part of the discussion about CEEPC priorities and plans in a little bit. But let's turn to the legislative preview. If there is anybody I'm not seeing, just speak up right now. Okay. Let's turn to Robert Christopher, COG Planner. And as you all know, CEEPC as a policy body has the authority to send letters regarding state and federal legislation within the scope of the COG board legislative priorities, which we will hear about in a minute. And so Maryland and Virginia have kicked off their general assemblies. I can tell you, in Maryland, it's been busy. Mr. Christopher will highlight that and show us some of the bills that are pending. And if anybody is interested in working on this committee of CEEPC, the subcommittee on legislation, please contact Robert or put your name in the chat during this presentation. Robert, are you ready to go?
I am, yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Dybala. Good morning, everyone. As the chair said, I'm Robert Christopher, an environmental planner with COG. I'm going to cover the CEEPC's legislative role, COG's 2026 priorities, key session dates, and some bills we're tracking in Maryland, Virginia, and DC, and opportunities for action and comment letters. Next slide, please. So CEEPC's Legislative Committee is a small group of CEEPC members who meet with staff to review legislation across DC, Maryland, and Virginia, COG staff track bills which are aligned with COG's legislative priorities, and when a bill has relevance to those priorities, we, when needed, convene ad hoc meetings with members to consider comment letters, either opposing or supporting legislation that falls under those priorities. And the committee primarily operates between January and April, which is aligned with the state legislative calendars. Next slide, please. Each January, the COG board adopts unified regional legislative priorities spanning transportation, housing, environment, climate, air quality, human services, preparedness, food security, and infrastructure. And specifically for CEEPC, we focus on the priorities for environment, water quality, climate resiliency, and air quality. Next slide, please. The specific priorities for this year are climate, clean energy, and air quality, policies to meet regional climate goals, accelerated multi-sector greenhouse gas reductions, secure, equitable clean energy access, aggressive renewable portfolio standards, innovation, financing, and technology deployment, expanded energy efficiency, and protections for regional air quality and public health. Next slide, please. So the work of the committee is oriented towards the legislative calendar, as I said, and for Virginia, the session began on January 14th. Crossover between the House and the Senate will occur on February 17th, and they will adjourn on March 14th. In Maryland, the session also began on January 14th. Crossover comes later on March 23rd, and adjournment is on April 13th. So Maryland generally has a longer session than Virginia does. And then DC is in the second year of a 2-year cycle, and legislation that we are tracking may have carried over from last year. Next slide, please. So these are just an example of some of the pieces of legislation that we're tracking in Virginia. House Bill 154 would require data centers to publicly report when using emergency generation up to 24 hours ahead of time. House Bill 507 would limit the amount of emitting backup generators and would require energy storage instead of using, say, a diesel generator for backup power. Senate Bill 69 would repeal requirements requiring regulations to reduce carbon dioxide emissions from electricity generating sources. And Senate Bill 5 would establish a task force to determine and address barriers to energy efficiency programs for residents across the state. And then under infrastructure development, House Bill 324 would create an electric vehicle rural infrastructure program and fund to offset installation costs in certain localities within or on within 1 mile or on public land. And House Bill 562 would authorize electric cooperatives to establish virtual power plant programs. And as I said, these are just an example. These are not all of the pieces of legislation we're tracking. These are just some of them for the purposes of this presentation. Next slide, please. In Maryland, for example, we are tracking House Bill 345, which would authorize the purchase, installation, and use of portable solar energy generating systems, otherwise known as balcony solar. House Bill 66, which would withdraw Maryland from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, also known as RGGI. House Bill 167, which would prohibit the state from purchasing gasoline-powered leaf blowers and prohibit the state or any contractor from using gasoline-powered leaf blowers in the state. And also Senate Bill 23, which would establish the Green and Renewable Energy Efficiency for Nonprofits Loan Program to provide financial assistance in the form of no-interest loans to nonprofit organizations for planning, purchase, and installation of qualifying energy systems and energy efficiency improvements. And next slide, please. So that's just a preview of the work that the legislative subcommittee does. And as the chair said, we are still open to any members of CEEPC that want to participate. And if there is any burning legislation that you think that we should have on our tracker, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That's a lot. You didn't Maybe I zoned, but you didn't mention DC and you didn't mention federal.
So we,
Uh,
we do track those. I didn't
Thank you.
include any, just by the ones that I did include were just by way of that, like showing what we do track. We do have some DC legislation we're tracking and some bills at the federal level, but mostly we focus on the state level.
Yeah, I looked at your lists yesterday, and in the federal, while there while there are things going on, I think personally, I think the focus for CEEPC really ought to be on the states this year, the states in DC. Um, Enough said. So from the group, are there any comments or questions? And most importantly, I'd like to ask you to share any bills that aren't on the list that you think the regional group um, ought to be aware of. Randy put something in the chat. Do you want to just say it?
Sure.
Go ahead.
There's actually probably 60 or 70 bills in the Virginia General Assembly that go beyond some of the items that you had mentioned. I know you were clear that this was just a sample, but wow, there's just a tsunami of bills that starting with clarifying Virginia's position vis-a-vis RGGI, a lot of utility reform measures that would place requirements on how integrated resource plans are done. There's a bunch of distributed generation bills to lower the barriers to small and medium scale solar. There's some battery storage bills. There are bills on agrivoltaics, which is an issue that has some real barriers in Virginia. A lot of local governments have been erecting barriers to converting farmland to utility scale solar. The agrivoltaics bills would help with that. And demand side management. As you probably know, a lot of the cost impacts of the data centers are that they add a lot to the peak generation. And the peak generation, it's only about 2 or 3% of the total hours that incur something like 20% of the costs for the utilities. So if you can reduce those peaks, you can really reduce the costs overall. You really reduce the greenhouse gas emissions because a lot of those peaks are associated with a lot of fossil fuel use. And this would be consistent with the governor's energy affordability agenda. So in short, there are a ton of bills. I think to summarize the sort of political situation, they're likely to sail through the House. It's a lot harder to get through the Senate, where the Dems hold a 21-19 advantage, and there's still a lot of Dems that care a lot about Dominion and care about the data center coalition because those groups spend lavishly in Richmond. So the key hurdle is getting through the Senate. If they get through the Senate, good chance they would be signed by Governor Spanberger, and a good chance that we could see kind of a renaissance of climate and clean energy legislation in Virginia. So that's the situation as I see it. I included a link in my chat to the Virginia Grassroots Coalition Climate and Clean Energy Work Group that lists several of these bills. Thanks.
Thank you. If in general what you're saying is that the opportunities in Virginia to address some issues that have been hanging around for a while are quite good this year comparatively, I think I agree with you. And I urge anybody else. Some people are putting things in the bills in the chat. Urge anybody else, particularly from Virginia, since I don't know Virginia legislation, but I was intrigued by some of the topics that you mentioned. So anybody else who's interested in particular bills in Virginia, let's get them on the list for Robert to track and possibly for CEEPC to comment. That's great. Anybody else want to make a verbal comment? This is important CEEPC work. It can be a little overwhelming because there's so many bills. And so thank you in advance to all the people who've volunteered to be on the subcommittee and pump out these comment letters when we get to that point. Anybody else that has something to say?
Cindy, Dave Snyder, just for Robert Christopher's benefit, I'm more than willing to assist in the legislative work in Virginia. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, hearing nothing else and seeing nothing else in the chat, our next topic is what is CEEPC priorities and plans for this year. So in thinking about last year and the presentations that we've had today, it seems to me that our focus ought to be two things this year. We should focus on the results of the mid-course review, what they mean for COG, what they mean for individual community goals and actions going forward. Because we have these established greenhouse gas emission goals at the regional, at the state, at the local level. And we have now the information thanks to the staff with the mid-course review. And so I see our task this year as focusing on what does this mean and letting the COG board know what it means for meeting our future goals. Speaking of the question that got raised earlier, I feel like that's really the focus this year. And also to support the COG board priorities that they set last year, which are, as somebody said, very ambitious. Regional EV infrastructure, tree canopy, and increasing solar installations by a lot. So with those two things in mind, we would then go ahead and shape the agendas of the meetings to meet those goals. So on the screen is going to be a more detailed listing of topics within these two areas. I don't see it on a screen. Who gets to do that? So what I would like to hear from in this time that we have for discussion, what I would like to hear is whether you think those are the two focus goals for this year, because I don't do this and the staff doesn't do this. We do this together. So I'd like to hear what you think of the two overall goals, which are about halfway down the screen. And then I would like to hear what topics you'd like to focus on in future meetings, besides the ones that have already come up, which would be mostly, somebody said crosswalks, cross jurisdictions. So I was wondering if we should have a touch base with TPB, with MWAC on the ozone. I think the tree group comes to us anyway. That would be one thing that may not already be on the list that probably should be of things to do this year. So if we could make a note to add that, I'd appreciate that. Heidi. So opening it up and hoping for either affirmation or adjustments to my suggestions for what we're going to do this year. Comments. I need staff to help me. I can't really see everybody in the chat boxes and on screen.
Randy Freed here. I'll just affirm that data centers needs to be toward the top of the list, because I think that the recent climate change action plan revisions that COG staff made. They revealed that this is a really important source category in the existing inventory, but they also they indicate that emissions are likely to be significant for 2030. I personally think that they were significantly underestimated in the forecast, and that they're going to go way up, notwithstanding the decarbonization of the grid. So I think that that's a very important factor. I think that the data centers in my county, Prince William, and neighboring Loudoun County, I think that the emissions from those two counties alone are probably enough to endanger the entire region from meeting its 50% greenhouse gas reduction goal. So affirmation on that one. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah, well, your 2 cents just became 6 or 8 cents in the chat box. And I agree too. So that suggests, Robert, that one thing we want to do with the legislative subcommittee is to look at the bills in Maryland and Virginia related to data centers. So there are at least 2 in Maryland, and they weren't on my short list because. So let's fix that. Other comments about.
Hello, Chair. Tom Olsina here, City of
Hi,
Manassas.
Tom.
Hey, everybody. How's everyone doing? Thank goodness we're doing this this way instead of trying to get through all the snow here. So
Yeah, let's hope by the end of March there's not a lot of snow on the ground.
exactly. Be careful, though. We may get that snowstorm. I think I have 3 things I wanted to add to the list here in some fashion or for consideration. Um, and just so everyone's aware, City of Manassas is surrounded by Prince William County, and then Fairfax and Loudoun are adjacent to us, and we're not in the immediate, urban ring there behind around Washington D.C. In that regard. So some of our concerns or needs are a little bit different here. First of all, to earlier speaker about the data centers, I would definitely agree the bloom is off data centers here. And in that regard, I think we're becoming aware of a lot of the cons that are involved with that, and we see the legislation that comes along, and again the fear always is that pendulum can go too far the other way along the way here. So we do need to strike a balance. We do have in the city of Manassas some data centers that are being built, not a lot, but we have also heard that there are landowners who are selling or willing to sell their land for data centers, and this is not where the city has a lot of control, obviously, along the way here, because they are properly in areas that are zoned to do so. In that case, so what we're finding is that how these not just the electricity that they consume is a major concern here, and how at least in our region, Dominion is going to be able to provide that and in what ways. And we've heard stories where they have told data centers that they won't be able to power them up for 6 months to a year, maybe even longer, even when they're built along the way here. So there's that facet, but there's also the facet of the cooling. For us, increasingly, water is becoming a big major concern. And while we have our own reservoir here, we are part of a compact, the Upper Occoquan Sewer and Water Authority there. And we're running into some problems with Fairfax Water about being able to use water, especially. I am not going to say it as correctly as it should be, but being able to use water that is not treated as highly as the water you and I drink for the purposes of cooling, and I'm getting opposition to this. And so we, on a regional basis, we got to be thinking regionally and cooperatively whenever possible and looking at long range solutions. So to me, water is another major concern, not just because of the data centers, but for our future growth, because water is crucial to all of our economic development along the way, in that regard. So I'd like to see that as one of our concerns. And of course, there's going to be, I believe there's a piece of legislation on this matter that's already been introduced by some delegates in Fairfax on behalf of Fairfax Water, ought to be tracked.
Okay.
And then sorry, let me just say, the last thing is going to be that a recognition that, we're not going to have the kind of mass transit, for instance, that in Arlington or in Alexandria is, or Montgomery, Prince George's, perhaps in that way. And so, some understanding that there's going to be some differences there on what our transportation solutions are going to be, tree canopy, and all of this sort of thing. And lastly, I will add, as we talk about economic development, and we're trying to reach carbon decreases by 2030. Unfortunately, Manassas is going to contribute to more carbon because we've approved commercial air service to our airport, and that will be meaning some more airplanes coming in, and what comes with that. So there is a mixed bag along this way here. Much to our chagrin on that regard. Not that Manassas doesn't want to see carbon reduction in any way, shape, or form, as opposed to that. But economic development is economic development there along the way. So there are those trade-offs to be recognized. So thank you for letting me talk for a couple of minutes there. Good meeting.
That was great. Thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in on things we should be hearing about um, uh, in the coming year? And again, there were a whole bunch of those that got mentioned earlier, which I've included in my notes for this. Anybody else have some comment here on what we ought to be doing?
I have a quick comment,
Yes.
my name's Frankie. I'm a new member with the city of Greenbelt. Then just took office in November. Very
Congratulations.
excited thank you so much. Very excited to be here. One thing, I think I see a lot on EVs here, and I understand the importance to a lot of people for EV infrastructure. I will say I can't speak. I have so many friends in the district and in neighborhoods of Silver Spring and Hyattsville who don't have cars, and they don't want a car, but they would love to find other places to live in the Metro Washington area. They want to stay in the area, and what we have in Greenbelt, and I'm sure a lot of other municipalities and county neighborhoods have, is the last mile problem, where we are relatively close to new infrastructure. City of Greenbelt is nestled between the Greenbelt Metro Station and the New Carrollton Metro Station on the green and orange lines. We have MARC service, we have Amtrak service, we have all this great infrastructure. But I was glad that ride on Flex was brought up, but really making sure that we are doing more to deepen the connections to our mass transit, because we make this incredible investment, and there are just some people who are just on the edge of being able to use it comfortably. And it's something I heard a lot from constituents here in the city, is that they want more transit options. So EV is great, but there's a lot of people who are trying to ditch the cost of a car entirely, and I think that's a mode shift we want to encourage. So let's make sure that our transportation is reaching as deep into our neighborhoods as possible.
Thank you for that. It's a problem in Tacoma Park too. For example, I live exactly a mile from the metro station, and between me and the metro station are 3 hills. So as I have lived here longer and longer, I've become less and less enthusiastic about that walk, and the last mile problem is real for me personally. And it also brings up the question earlier of the intersection with housing, with sustainable housing. So I think there's something there that we should be looking at. Absolutely. Anything else? Okay, this has been really helpful, and if you have other suggestions for topics or speakers that you think we should know about, please do let us email the staff and or me, and we'll see if we can work that in, because this is our time so that we can do our jobs better, and that's an important piece of this. So a couple business pieces, and then the sharing that we do every meeting. So meeting dates, March 25th is in person. It is the 100th anniversary meeting of CEEPC. So it's 100 times that people from all over the region have been getting together to help solve these regional and local problems related to climate. So that's worth celebrating. Need all the celebration time we can get these days. So please do plan to be in person on March 25th. The other meetings, I believe, are all virtual. They're listed in your agenda, and the November meeting, the date is tentative because it conflicts with the National League of Cities meeting. So I don't know what the resolution is on that, but just know that. So again, in March, we'll present the mid-course report. We'll highlight the regional progress. We'll celebrate. We'll celebrate. We'll have lunch and a new member orientation. So please do hang in here for the last 20 minutes because we need to hear staff updates and then the different committees that subcommittees that report committees that report to us or that we work with will all be filling us in, and those are important connections to make. So
wastewater systems in Mississippi, 9 wastewater systems.
Let's start with, I'm sorry, who was that?
I think someone was just off mute, so it was
Okay, all right, somebody was just off mute. And yes, I think it would be good if we recirculated the invite for all the COG data center forums. I'm assuming staff's going to bring that up right now. So we'll start with staff updates. The auto show, more on the March meeting and the data center series. Who is doing that?
I'm providing the auto show update.
Go for it.
Okay, great. And this will also serve as the update for the regional electric vehicle deployment working group because it was served as the first meeting of that for the year. So last Thursday, on the 22nd, we hosted what has become an annual event at the Public Policy Day at the DC Auto Show. We had the former head of the Joint Office, Gabe Klein, talk about how the role really sits now with state and local, given the current political and legal shifts with the Fed. And then we got updates from Maryland, DC, and Virginia on their NEVI and CFI programs, with EVs reaching 24.4% of new registrations in DC, and both Maryland and Virginia taking part in the $9.6 million NEVI Round 2 conditional awards. And we had 2 panels, both moderated by Antoine Thompson of the Greater Washington Region Clean Cities Coalition. The first focused on the shift towards a functional financial mindset, talking about how to ensure reliability for charging. Folks talked about how agencies are moving to withhold certain project funding until chargers are proven functional, to address an industry-wide issue of dead equipment. Alan Harned from Virginia Clean Cities reported that they have 28 projects that have successfully restarted following changes to federal guidance. And then the final session focused on exploring or accelerating adoption through education and creative financing. And we heard from the Maryland Clean Energy Center, Montgomery County Green Bank, and PEPCO. And they talked about bridging financial gaps for underserved areas, and programs like the EV Grand Prix. And that wrapped up today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question. Was it recorded? I don't remember.
No, it was in person, okay. And there was no recording.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to do the regional? Yeah, let's not mix things up. Let's keep going. Who's talking about the March meeting and the data series?
I can do that. This is Jeff King. Yeah, so our executive director, Clark Mercer, asked staff to organize a series of forums to discuss some of the issues and challenges associated with data centers through the region. And we convinced them to break it into, some manageable chunks. So first we'll have one on energy, focus on energy at the meeting February 25th. That'll be held in Northern Virginia at the ICF headquarters in Reston, right on the Silver Line. The second one will be on water, and that will be held in DC on, I think, March 2nd at the Reservoir Center, which I think is a DC water facility, maybe. And so that one is on the books now and being planned. The third one is on land use and economic development. That one has yet to be scheduled. And interesting, those of you who may know, Paul Desjardins, who was our planning director for 30 plus years at COG, retired, and we've been looking for a new planning director to run that department. And I think that position will be filled soon. So hopefully by late February, we'll be able to announce who's going to be taking that position. And we're really excited to have kind of a new planning director, economic development lead for COG. So hopefully they'll jump right in and get involved with this data center event. That one we're going to try to hold in Maryland, and I don't think they've figured out a site location yet. I think they're looking maybe at the University of Maryland facility or perhaps a different place. But so that's and interesting. The focus of the series, at least, is intended to be attended by COG member government elected officials, COG member government agency staff, and our key stakeholders. We're not billing this as an open to the public, come one, come all event, and we're going to try to carefully navigate that. But at this point, the invite for the energy forum has gone out to, I think, all of CEEPC. If you did not get that, put it in the chat. We'll make sure you get a copy of that. I'm not sure the status of the water invite yet. Heidi can maybe help track that down. So that's the data center series.
That is great. I'm really looking forward to these because it is a regional issue for all what everybody just said. This could blow our climate goals out of the water, not to mention our water supply goals. Maya, did you have anything to say about the mid-course reporting schedule?
No, Madam Chair, nothing that we haven't already discussed.
Okay, great. Now we would like to turn to member roundtable updates. And so the first up is the Built Environment and Energy Advisory Committee, BEAC. I'd love to hear what's going on with you guys. Who's doing that?
Yes, good morning. This is Maddie Bizzardo.
Good morning, Maddie.
I'm from the city of Bowie, and I am the new chair of the BEAC, along with Al Carr from DC and Valerie Amore from the city of Alexandria. And so this year, in preparation for the year, the committee got together with COG staff, and we decided to come up with some preliminary priorities. And those priorities are, we're going to be looking at energy, battery energy storage system, microgrids, PJM peak load and grid reliability. We're also going to be looking at resilience hubs, which will include a look at George Mason University's Virginia's Climate Center's new report. That was a mouthful. It was just published in November of 2025. It's the first Virginia climate assessment. So we'll be looking at that. We're also going to be looking at Maryland's Office of Resilience and their new toolkit. We'll also be looking at climate budgeting. And then finally, we're going to be looking at Electrified DC Homeowners Hub, which is an effort that I know COG has been supporting to enhance home electrification across the region. This is a really big list, we know. We are going to try to tackle it. However, we kind of fall short and we're not able to do it, we can move some of those over to 2027. These priorities will be presented to our first BAC meeting on February 19th. And if you guys have any questions or comments about what we've developed, please feel free to email me or to COG's staff. And that's pretty much all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot to ask if there are any questions for staff or for Maddie on BAC. Okay, if something occurs to you, you can pop it in the chat. So speaking of AgPAC, do we have someone from AgPAC speaking today?
Yes, we do.
Thank you, William.
Okay. William Washburn, and I will begin by noting that AgPAC elected new officers for 2026. On Monday night, the new chair for this year is Ian Marcus of Maryland, and the new vice chair for this year is Chris Tandy of Virginia. And the reason that you're looking at my face instead of Ian's is because we didn't want to drop Ian in the deep end of the pool too fast. He was just elected Monday night, okay? And so the committee and COG staff asked me to deliver an update for the ACPAC meeting, which was held on January 26th, Monday night. So very quickly, items that we looked at were that were taken up at the meeting included a brief review of ACPAC bylaws and rules of procedure amendments that MWAC is considering for adoption. There were no real issues with the procedures other than a request on the part of some ACPAC members for a more effective way of providing feedback from the technical committee meetings, CEEPC and MWAC. ACPAC is interested. I mean, they're interested in seeing more consistent feedback on what happens at the technical committee meeting. So they'll be continuing to work on that during this year. Our proposed priorities, as it is for CEEPC, data centers will continue to be a priority for ACPAC's consideration. And while DC is not a site for any new data, but for any hyperscale data centers, there are of course impacts on energy cost because of the data center's disproportionate impact on the need to build out additional capacity for the grid. So ACPAC will continue to coordinate with COG staff and with community partners in all three jurisdictions with regards to those energy cost impacts, because that is an environmental justice concern, and so they will continue to be focused on that. As Heidi mentioned earlier, the environmental justice toolkit was approved by ACPAC at our meeting this past Monday, and so that And so that, of course, is already up and online. And we invite everyone to familiarize themselves with the toolkit and to provide feedback to MWAC, as well as and to provide feedback to ACPAC. And so the Environmental Justice Toolkit is up and running. And our next meeting for ACPAC will be on the 16th of March. At this point, it will probably be an online meeting, as our meetings have been, but you can contact you can deal with COG staff to see whether or not that'll be the case. And with that, I include the update for ACPAC. I want to thank everyone for your indulgence. As the next update for ACPAC at MWAC meeting, as well as CEEPC, will be by Ian Marcus. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. Do you need, well, never mind. I'll ask staff that question. So moving along to Regional Electric Vehicle Deployment Working Group, RevD, who've we got?
That was the auto show update encompassed that, because that was the first meeting of that for the year.
Okay. I didn't realize that, actually. Great. Greater Washington Regional Clean Cities Coalition.
Yeah, hi, Chair DeBala. I don't see Antoine on the line, and for the next
Yeah, I
item,
don't either.
committee, I don't see John Snar on the line, and not sure if anyone is available to give an update on recycling. Going once, going twice. Yeah, so I think those two items you can skip and just go straight to the tree canopy subcommittee.
Okay. That's too
Okay.
bad, because I
Oh.
was really interested to ask the recycling committee some questions about the data that we saw at the beginning of the presentation. Presumably that's something they have and they're talking about.
We do have Michelle Blair here.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Good morning. So I'm the outgoing chair of the recycling committee. We have not been able to have our final year end because of holiday schedules and weather. So the last event that we had was our composting, which again is all about waste diversion and reduction of methane gas emissions at the landfill. It was a very well attended meeting, and we're going to certainly be picking up on that theme as we go into 2026 with the new chair, whoever that is going to be.
Okay. Helpful. Thank you. Yeah, the recycling, recycling and compost numbers that in the report caught my attention, because it seemed like we're pretty far from our aspirational goal. So more on that over the course of the year. Regional Tree Canopy Subcommittee. I saw you earlier. You spoke.
Yes, so I'll cover this for today, but I'm glad you all got a chance to meet our chair, Brian Kitely, for this year. And he actually chaired the Regional Tree Canopy Subcommittee this past year as well, and has graciously agreed to stay on as chair, and is going to see us through developing an action plan for the tree canopy goal this year. And then the only other update, yeah, so this is a big year for tree canopy in terms of an action plan to make more concrete how we're going to keep this canopy goal. But in addition, I wanted to mention that our former chair, Mike Knapp, who many of you know from being on this committee, he was instrumental in forming the tree canopy goal and COG reports, and he presented a generalized presentation to the Chesapeake Bay program audience a couple weeks ago. just about COG's canopy goal and how we're using the Bay program data to track our trend over time in the region. And so if you would like to see that presentation that he gave, I'm going to drop the YouTube link in the chat right now. So that is it for the tree canopy right now.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was that was a good presentation, I hear. So yes, I would appreciate it. Thank you. So we have 4 minutes for any member updates and for any questions that are remaining for any of the people who gave updates. Does anybody have an update from your community? We heard a couple things along the way as we were talking about different topics. Any other comments that people want to make? Any what's going on in your community? I alluded to our new multifamily pilot for waste management. That's one of the big things that we're doing. And I talked about our multifamily electrification program. Those are 2 big ones for us. If anybody is interested in them, just get a hold of me. What about other people? What are you working on? Okay, everybody wants to get lunch. Anybody have a comment before we close out? Okay, so in the future, this is the slot for people to share if there's something they're really excited about. We can be forgiven for not being excited about much of anything when we're all snowed and iced in today. So just a reminder, Wednesday, March 25th, next meeting in person, and hang around for a little bit of lunch, allow your commute time, and then the next meetings following that. If you have any topics or speakers that are related to the work we do, please suggest them to Heidi so we can see if they fit in. You get the general framework of what we're going to be working on this year. And with that, I will close the meeting. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you in a couple months.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair Dybala.